two Apache women expelled for being widows, until a rancher said, "Come with me." The sun hung low over the dry hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. In a small Apache village nestled between rugged cliffs and wide plains, two women sat quietly outside the small huts that had been their home for many years. Maya and Lena had lived in this village all their lives. They had known love, laughter, and the joy of family. But their hearts now carried a heavy sorrow. Both had lost their husbands in recent years, leaving them widowed in a society that had little patience for those who were no longer under the protection of a man. Maya ran her fingers over the worn leather of a small pouch she always carried. Inside were a few keepsakes from her late husband, a carved wooden whistle he had made for her, a small feather he had given her on their wedding day. Every time she touched it, memories came flooding back. His laugh, the way he held her close during cold nights, the pride he had shown when she learned new skills from the elders. But now, those memories felt like both a comfort and a chain. She glanced at Lena, who sat a few steps away, her eyes fixed on the distant hills. Lena's hands were rough from years of hard work, but now they trembled slightly. She, too, held a small token, a piece of her husband's necklace, frayed but cherished. The village elders called them to the central square that afternoon. As the women approached, the sun beat down on their shoulders, and the dusty path seemed longer than usual. The other villagers gathered in silence, murmuring quietly among themselves. Maya felt her stomach tighten. She could sense the tension, the judgment in the way people whispered and looked at them. Lena walked close beside her, her face calm but her heart racing. Neither woman wanted this moment to come, yet neither could escape it. The tribal council, consisting of the eldest men and women, sat in a semicircle under a large shade tree. Their faces were stern, lined with age and authority. The head elder, a man named Chief Kiona, looked directly at Maya and Lena, his eyes unyielding. "You have been loyal members of our village," he began, his voice strong and commanding. "But our laws are clear. Widows are no longer considered part of the village proper. You are free to leave for your protection and the well-being of our community." The words hit like a sudden storm. Maya's hands gripped her pouch tightly, the leather digging into her palms. Lena's breath caught, and for a moment neither spoke. The villagers around them shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, ashamed, while others whispered in agreement with the council. The women had heard whispers before, rumors of other widows who had been forced to leave, but hearing the words aloud made the reality impossible to deny. "Leave?" Maya's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried across the square. "Where are we to go? What are we to do?" Chief Kiona's expression softened slightly, though his words remained firm. "The land outside the village is harsh, but it is your choice. You may travel as you wish, but know this, returning will not be permitted. Your place here is no longer." Maya and Lena turned away from the council and walked back toward their huts, their hearts heavy with fear and sadness. They spent the rest of the day gathering their belongings, choosing only the most essential items. A few blankets, a small knife, dried food, and the precious tokens of their lost husbands. Every object they packed reminded them of what they had lost, and yet it was all they could take. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples, the women left the village quietly. No one tried to stop them. The villagers gave them space, some out of respect, others out of fear of drawing the council's wrath. Maya and Lena walked side by side along the dusty trail that led into the open plains. The wind blew across their faces, carrying the scent of dry grass and distant fire. It was beautiful in its own harsh way, yet terrifying in its vast emptiness. At first, they spoke little. Words seemed pointless in the face of their sorrow. But as night fell and the stars emerged, Lena broke the silence. "Do you remember when we used to watch the stars with our husbands?" she asked softly. "We thought they were so close, like we could touch them. Maya nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. I remember. And now it feels like we are lost under them. Alone. They set up a small fire, the flames flickering and casting shadows on their tired faces. The night was cold, the desert air sharp against their skin. They huddled together for warmth, sharing what little food they had. But even in the face of hunger and fear, they found comfort in each other's presence. They spoke of their husbands, their children, if they had any, and the lives they had led before tragedy struck. Each story was a thread that wove them closer, a reminder that even in exile, they were not entirely alone. The nights were the hardest. Strange sounds carried on the wind, coyotes howling in the distance, the rustle of unseen creatures and the groan of trees swaying in the night. Every shadow seemed like a threat, every distant sound a possible danger. Maya clutched her knife, her eyes scanning the darkness. Lena's hand rested on her arm, a silent promise of solidarity. They had no guide, no protection, only each other and the harsh land stretching endlessly before them. Days passed slowly. They walked during the cooler hours, resting when the sun climbed too high. They drank sparingly from small streams and dug small pits to collect rainwater when it fell. The desert was unforgiving, testing their endurance and determination. Yet in their struggle, they discovered hidden strengths within themselves. Maya learned to read the land, noticing subtle signs of water or shelter. Lena remembered old herbal remedies, using plants to soothe bruises and blisters. They began to rely not only on each other, but on the knowledge passed down from their ancestors. One morning, after walking for what felt like endless hours, they found themselves at the edge of a rocky cliff overlooking a wide valley. The view was breathtaking. Rolling hills stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with shrubs and wildflowers. The wind swept across the valley, carrying the scent of earth and grass. For a moment they forgot their pain and fear, lost in the beauty of the land. It's beautiful," Maya whispered. "I never imagined anything like this outside the village." Lena nodded, a small smile breaking through her somber expression. Perhaps there is hope out here after all." But hope was fragile. They knew the dangers were far from over. Food was scarce, water could vanish at any time, and the vastness of the land meant they could easily become lost. And yet, the bond between them grew stronger with every challenge they faced. They shared stories, sang softly to keep spirits high, and laughed at small jokes to remind themselves of joy. Weeks passed, and the women began to adapt to their new life. They built a small shelter using branches and leaves, finding protection from wind and occasional rain. They grew stronger, more resilient, and more attuned to the land. Yet, despite these small victories, loneliness and uncertainty always lingered. They often spoke of their village, of friends and family left behind, and the unfairness of being cast out simply for circumstances beyond their control. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky glowed with golden light, Maya and Lena sat on a small hill overlooking the desert. They were exhausted from the day's walk, their muscles aching, but their spirits remained unbroken. "Do you think anyone will ever help us?" Lena asked quietly. Maya looked at her friend, her eyes reflecting both determination and longing. "I don't know, but we can't give up. We have each other, and as long as we keep moving forward, something or someone might come our way." They stayed there long after the sun had disappeared, wrapped in blankets, staring at the stars. Each star seemed to hold a promise, a whisper that life could still be kind. They did not know what tomorrow would bring, only that they would face it together. And in that shared courage, they found a quiet strength, a flicker of hope that life could continue even after unimaginable loss. Little did they know that their journey was about to change in ways they could never imagine. As they prepared to rest for the night, the faint sound of hooves echoed in the distance. It was soft at first, almost imperceptible against the vastness of the desert, but with each passing moment it grew clearer. Maya and Lena exchanged a glance, uncertainty and curiosity mingling in their expressions. "Who could be out here?" Lena whispered. Maya shook her head, gripping her knife with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "I don't know, but we will face them together." The sound of hooves drew closer and a shadow appeared on the horizon. The women's hearts raced. In the vast, lonely desert, the arrival of another human could mean danger or salvation. They huddled together, ready for whatever might come. And so, under the wide, star-filled sky, the two exiled women waited, unaware that their lives were about to take a dramatic turn. Their journey of survival, courage, and unexpected companionship was only just beginning. The sound of hooves grew louder across the open desert. Maya and Lena held their breath, eyes fixed on the shadow moving toward them. The tall figure of a man on horseback became clearer as he approached, the muscles of his horse rippling under the warm sunlight. He was broad-shouldered, with a calm but strong presence that seemed to command respect even without a word. The woman's hearts pounded, a mixture of fear and cautious hope running through them. The man stopped a safe distance away and raised his hand in greeting. "Hello there," he called in a steady voice. "I didn't expect to find anyone out here. Are you lost?" Maya and Lena exchanged a quick glance. They had been alone for weeks, surviving on their wits and the small resources they carried. The idea of another human, a stranger, approaching them in the vast desert made their instincts tense. Yet there was something in the man's voice, a gentleness, a sense of honesty that made them hesitate before retreating. "We're not lost," Maya said carefully, stepping forward. Her voice was soft, but it carried a hint of pride and courage. "We are traveling." The man nodded slowly, as if reading between the lines. "I see. Traveling alone can be dangerous out here. The desert is beautiful, yes, but it can also be unforgiving. My name is Tamaz. I live not too far from here on a ranch. If you need food, water, or shelter, I can offer you a place to rest." Lena's eyes widened slightly. Shelter, safety, someone who wasn't going to judge them or turn them away. These words seemed almost too good to be true. "A ranch?" she asked cautiously. How far?" Tamaz looked toward the horizon, where a cluster of trees marked the edge of a valley. "Not far from here. Perhaps a few hours' ride. I will take it slow. You are welcome to come with me. I promise nothing but safety and work to keep you occupied if you wish." Maya and Lena looked at each other. After weeks of wandering alone, the desert weighing heavily on them, the promise of shelter was irresistible. Yet there was still fear. They had been betrayed before by life's cruelty, forced to leave their village simply because they had lost their husbands. Could they trust this man? Could they trust anyone? After a long moment of hesitation, Maya nodded. "We will come with you," she said finally, "but we cannot promise anything beyond that." Tamaz smiled warmly. "That is all I ask. Let's take it slow. The land is vast, but together we can manage." The women climbed onto the horse slowly, one at a time. Tamaz made sure they were secure before he mounted behind them, guiding the horse along a safe path through the desert. The sun blazed overhead, but the movement of the horse created a gentle breeze that cooled their faces. For the first time in weeks, the women felt a small sense of relief. They were no longer entirely alone. As they rode, the women began to ask questions, tentatively at first. "Do you live here alone?" Lena asked, her voice cautious. Tamaz shook his head. "I have ranch hands who help me with the livestock and the land. They are good people. But yes, I spend much of my time out here alone, tending to the ranch. It is hard work but rewarding." Maya glanced at him, studying his face. "And you, why would you help us, strangers in the desert?" Tamaz shrugged lightly. "Because no one should be left out here to suffer. I know the desert well, and I know it can be cruel. I have helped travelers before. You are no different from anyone else who needs a hand." The words touched the women in ways they could not yet express. For so long, they had been abandoned and judged, forced to survive alone. And now, here was a man offering them help without asking for anything in return. It was a strange, almost foreign kindness. As the hours passed, the terrain changed. The dusty plains gave way to rolling hills, dotted with shrubs and small trees. The air was fresher, carrying the scent of wildflowers and grass that grew in hidden patches among the rocks. The women marveled at the landscape, their eyes widening in wonder. Even in the harsh desert, beauty persisted, and now they could see it clearly. Tamaz guided the horse carefully down a narrow path, leading them to a small creek where water ran clear and cool. "We can rest here for a while," he said. "Drink, wash your faces, and gather your strength. The ranch is not far now, and you will need it." The women dismounted and drank eagerly from the creek. The water was refreshing, almost magical in its ability to revive them after days of limited supplies. Lena splashed some on her face, laughing softly as the coolness stung pleasantly against her sunburned skin. Maya followed, feeling a small spark of joy that she hadn't experienced in weeks. Sitting by the water, they began to talk more freely, sharing their stories. Maya spoke of her husband, a brave and gentle man who had cared deeply for her. Lena shared memories of her husband, a kind soul who had taught her to hunt and understand the ways of the land. Their stories were tinged with sadness, but also with a warmth that reminded them of love's presence, even in absence. Tamaz listened quietly, never interrupting. When he spoke, it was with respect and care. "You too have endured much," he said softly, "but you are stronger than you realize. The desert can test anyone, but you are still standing. That is a sign of your courage." The words gave the women a small boost of confidence. For so long they had felt powerless, judged, and abandoned. But here, in the presence of someone who treated them as equals, they began to feel a flicker of hope. After resting by the creek, they continued their journey. Tamaz rode at a steady pace, ensuring that the women were comfortable. The afternoon sun began to sink toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the hills. Birds flew overhead, heading toward their nests for the night. The women felt a growing sense of anticipation as they neared the ranch, unsure of what awaited them but cautiously optimistic. As they crested a small hill, the ranch came into view. It was larger than they had imagined, with wide fields, sturdy fences, and a small cluster of buildings nestled among tall trees. Smoke rose from a chimney, and the sound of animals carried in the gentle evening breeze. The sight was comforting, a promise of shelter and stability in a world that had offered so little. This, this is where you live?" Maya asked, awe in her voice. Tamaz nodded. "Yes, it is a simple life, but it is honest and safe. You will have work to do if you choose to stay, but you will also have food, shelter, and protection." The women dismounted, their legs stiff from the ride but their spirits lifted. They followed Tamaz along a dirt path that led to the main house. Along the way, ranch hands appeared, pausing their work to nod politely at the newcomers. The women sensed no judgment here, only quiet curiosity and respect. As they reached the porch of the house, Tamaz turned to them. "This will be your home for as long as you wish," he said. "You are welcome here and no one will force you to leave." Maya and Lena looked at each other, emotions swirling, relief, gratitude, and a touch of disbelief. It had been so long since anyone had offered them genuine kindness. For weeks, they had struggled to survive alone in a world that seemed indifferent to their suffering. And now, here was a chance to start anew. As evening settled over the ranch, the women explored their new surroundings. They were shown a small cabin where they could rest, and a kitchen where meals would be prepared. They were introduced to the animals, horses, cattle, and chickens, and even allowed to help with feeding them. For the first time in weeks, they felt a sense of purpose and belonging. That night, as they sat by the fireplace in their cabin, Maya spoke softly. "I never thought I would find safety again, not after what happened in the village." Lena nodded, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "It feels like a miracle. Maybe there is still kindness in the world, even when it seems impossible." Tamaz, sitting nearby, smiled quietly. Kindness exists, yes, but it also takes courage to accept it. You two have shown courage every step of the way. Now you can rest and begin to rebuild your lives." The women felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. They had survived the harsh desert, faced their fears, and now found themselves in a place of safety and possibility. Yet they knew that this was only the beginning. Life at the ranch would not be without challenges, and trust would take time to grow. But for the first time in a long while, they felt that the world could hold more than pain. It could also hold hope, safety, and even joy. As they drifted off to sleep that night, the sounds of the ranch, soft snorts of horses, the low hum of wind through the trees, the occasional call of an owl soothed their spirits. They were no longer alone in the desert. They were part of something new, something that offered them a chance to heal and thrive. And though they did not yet know it, this encounter with Tamaz would mark the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one filled with growth, friendship, and the quiet courage that comes from surviving the impossible together. The morning sun poured through the windows of the small cabin, casting warm golden light across the wooden floor. Maya stirred first, stretching her arms and letting out a long yawn. Lena was already awake, sitting by the window, her eyes scanning the fields beyond. The ranch was quiet, except for the soft sounds of animals beginning their day, the low moo of cows, the clucking of chickens, and the occasional whinny of a horse. For the first time in weeks, the women felt a sense of calm. They no longer had to worry about where their next meal would come from or whether the desert would provide shelter for the night. Here, there was food, water, and protection, and yet a small part of them remained cautious. They had been forced out of their village, judged and abandoned. Could this safety last? Could they trust it? Tamaz appeared at the cabin door, smiling warmly. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you slept well. There's much to do today, and I want to show you around the ranch." Maya and Lena exchanged a glance. They nodded, eager but nervous. This would be their first real step into a new life, a life so different from the one they had known. They followed Tamaz outside, feeling the cool morning breeze on their faces. The ranch stretched before them, larger than they had imagined. Fences lined the pastures, separating horses from cows, while chickens wandered freely in a small coop near the barn. A small garden grew near the house, with rows of vegetables and herbs thriving in neat lines. "This is your home now," Tamaz said, spreading his arms to include the entire ranch. "You will have work to do if you choose to stay, but it is honest work. It will help you learn, grow, and feel part of something bigger." Maya looked around, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Everything is so big," she whispered. "So much to take care of." Lena nodded, running a hand over the fence. "It is beautiful, but I have never done work like this before. I hope I can learn." Tamaz smiled. "You will. I will teach you, and the ranch hands will help you as well. We all work together here." The day began with small tasks. Maya and Lena helped feed the chickens, gathering eggs and scattering feed across the coop. They learned how to check the water troughs, ensuring that all the animals had enough to drink. At first, their hands were clumsy, unsure of how to handle the animals without startling them. The chickens flapped and squawked, pecking at their hands as they tried to scatter feed evenly. Maya laughed softly and Lena joined in, the sound of their laughter echoing across the quiet morning. By midday, they were introduced to the horses. Tamaz showed them how to groom the animals, brushing their coats and checking hooves for injuries. The horses were calm and patient, and slowly the women gained confidence. Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she brushed a horse named Shadow, noticing how smooth and healthy his coat had become under her careful hands. Lena worked with a gentle mare named Dawn, feeling the warmth of her breath and the soft nuzzle against her shoulder. Lunch was prepared by one of the ranch hands, a cheerful young man named Miguel, who welcomed the women with a friendly smile. They sat together under the shade of a large oak tree, enjoying simple but nourishing food: bread, cheese, and fresh fruit from the garden. The women were grateful for the first hot meal they had had in days, and for the company that made them feel less like outsiders. After lunch, Tamaz took them to the fields. He showed them the crops, corn, beans, and squash, and explained how to care for them. Maya listened carefully, absorbing every detail. Lena asked questions, eager to understand the techniques that would help the plants grow strong and healthy. Together, they worked in the fields, pulling weeds, watering the young plants, and learning the rhythm of life on the ranch. As the sun climbed higher, the women began to feel the physical demands of the work. Their arms ached from lifting buckets, and their backs grew tired from bending over the soil. Yet, with every task completed, they felt a sense of accomplishment. They realized that this was different from their past life. Here, their work was valued and they could see the results of their efforts. They were contributing, not merely surviving. In the evening, they returned to the cabin, tired but satisfied. Tamaz had prepared a warm meal and they ate together, sharing stories of their day. Maya spoke of the joy she felt brushing shadow, while Lena described the satisfaction of seeing the plants grow under her care. Tamaz listened, nodding and encouraging them, his presence calm and reassuring. Over the next few days, Maya and Lena settled into a routine. They learned to milk the cows, gather firewood, and maintain the fences that kept the animals safe. They helped cook meals, clean the cabins, and even repair tools with guidance from the ranch hands. At first, every task felt overwhelming, but gradually they became more confident. Their bodies grew stronger, their minds sharper, and their spirits lighter. The women also began to interact more with the ranch hands and neighbors. Miguel, the cheerful helper, shared stories of his own struggles and dreams. He treated Maya and Lena with respect, never questioning their past or their abilities. Other workers showed patience and kindness, guiding them when mistakes were made and celebrating small victories with them. Slowly, the women began to feel a sense of belonging, a feeling they had not experienced since leaving their village. One afternoon, Tamaz took them on a walk around the property. They climbed a small hill that overlooked the entire ranch, the sun casting long shadows across the fields. The view was breathtaking. They could see the animals grazing peacefully, the garden thriving, and the main house standing proudly among the trees. "This land, it feels alive," Maya said softly. "I never imagined I could find peace after everything we've been through." Lena nodded, her eyes misty. "I feel safe here. For the first time in a long while, I feel like we belong somewhere." Tamaz smiled, his gaze steady. "You do belong here, and you will continue to belong as long as you choose to stay. Life will not always be easy, but it will be honest, and you will have support when you need it." As weeks passed, Maya and Lena grew stronger and more self-assured. They began to anticipate the needs of the ranch, helping without being asked. Maya discovered a talent for caring for the horses, learning to understand their moods and respond to their signals. Lena excelled in the garden, nurturing the crops and experimenting with new planting techniques. Their confidence blossomed, and with it, a sense of pride in their abilities. But life at the ranch was not without challenges. One day, a sudden storm swept across the plains. Strong winds knocked over fences, and rain flooded some of the fields. The women worked tirelessly alongside Tamaz and the ranch hands, repairing damage and ensuring the animals were safe. It was exhausting, both physically and mentally, but they rose to the challenge. By the end of the day, the ranch was secure, and the women felt a renewed sense of accomplishment. They realized that hard work could be fulfilling, even when it was difficult. Through these experiences, Maya and Lena also learned patience and resilience. They understood that growth took time, whether it was the crops in the garden, the horses in the stable, or their own recovery from past hardships. Each day brought new lessons, and they embraced them fully, determined to make the most of this second chance at life. Evenings became a time of reflection. The women would sit together, watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and purples. They shared dreams, hopes, and fears, supporting each other as they had always done. The bond between them deepened, strengthened by the challenges they faced and the triumphs they celebrated together. Tamaz remained a constant presence, guiding them without forcing them. He treated them as equals, respecting their independence while offering support when needed. The women came to trust him, not just as a protector, but as someone who genuinely cared for their well-being. His patience, kindness, and quiet strength inspired them to believe in the possibility of a better life. One evening, as the women sat by the fireplace, Lena spoke softly. "I never thought I could feel this way again, like life can be good. After everything, I thought happiness was gone for us." Maya nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "It is still here. We just had to find it in a place we never expected." Tamaz smiled, sitting across from them. "Happiness is not something that appears suddenly. It grows slowly like the crops in the field. You nurture it, care for it, and protect it. And now you are learning how to do that for yourselves." The women felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had come to the ranch weary, uncertain, and afraid. But now they were growing into capable, confident, and hopeful individuals. They realized that life had given them a second chance, not just at survival, but at fulfillment, community, and even joy. As the days turned into weeks, Maya and Lena became an integral part of the ranch. They were no longer outsiders. They were contributors, respected and valued. Their lives, once marked by loss and exile, were now filled with purpose and connection. They had faced the desert, survived its challenges, and discovered the strength within themselves. And now, in the safe embrace of the ranch and its community, they could finally begin to heal fully, embracing the possibilities of the future. The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a soft, golden light over the ranch. Maya and Lena had spent the day tending to the garden and helping with the animals. Their hands were worn and dirt-streaked, but their hearts felt lighter than they had in years. The ranch had become their home, a place where work, friendship, and quiet moments of reflection filled their days. They laughed easily, shared stories, and slowly the pain of their past seemed to loosen its grip. Yet even in moments of calm, the shadows of their past sometimes lingered. Neither woman could forget the harsh judgment of their village, the day they had been forced to leave. For all the comfort and safety the ranch offered, the fear that life could suddenly take a turn for the worse still lingered in the back of their minds. That evening, as they prepared to gather water from a nearby well, a distant sound caught their attention. At first it was faint, just a rustle in the brush, easily dismissed as the wind or a small animal. But the sound grew sharper, more deliberate, and the women exchanged a concerned glance. "Do you hear that?" Lena whispered, her eyes scanning the horizon. Maya nodded slowly. "Yes, it doesn't sound like an animal." Tamaz appeared beside them, his brow furrowed. He had been checking on the horses in the corral. "What is it?" he asked, his voice calm but alert. Maya shook her head. "I'm not sure. It's people, I think." Coming from the direction of the village, Tamaz's eyes narrowed slightly. "Stay calm. Let's move back toward the house. We'll assess the situation from there." The women followed him, their hearts racing. The vast plains that had once felt so welcoming now seemed tense and uncertain. As they approached the porch of the main house, they saw movement on the horizon. Several figures were approaching, their forms silhouetted by the setting sun. "They're coming closer," Lena murmured, gripping Maya's arm. "Do you think could they be from the village?" Tamaz nodded slowly. "It seems likely. We don't know their intentions yet, but we will face this together." The figures drew nearer, and the women could see that they were indeed men from the village. Their expressions were hard, their eyes filled with anger and judgment. Maya's heart sank. After weeks of safety and peace, the threat of their past had returned in a tangible form. The villagers reached the edge of the ranch and called out, "Maya, Lena, you do not belong here. Return with us or face the consequences." The women froze. The fear they had carried since their exile surged through them like a cold wave. But Tamaz stepped forward, placing himself between the women and the approaching men. His posture was strong, protective, and unwavering. "You will not harm them," Tamaz said firmly, his voice carrying across the plains. "They are under my protection. You will leave now, or I will make sure you cannot come any closer." The villagers hesitated, taken aback by his calm authority. They had expected fear and submission, not defiance. Maya and Lena, seeing Tamaz stand so firmly for them, felt a spark of courage ignite within themselves. One of the men stepped forward, pointing at the women. "They have disobeyed the laws of our village. We cannot allow them to remain here, living as though they have rights." Tamaz shook his head slowly. "The laws of the village do not apply here. These women are safe and you will not dictate their lives. Now leave peacefully or face consequences for your aggression." For a tense moment, silence hung in the air. The villagers muttered among themselves, unsure of what to do. They had expected the women to beg, to submit, to return. But here, at the edge of the ranch, faced with Tamaz's unwavering presence and the women's quiet determination, they realized that intimidation would not work. Maya took a deep breath. "We are not your property," she said, her voice steady despite the fear still fluttering in her chest. "We are alive and we have the right to live freely. You cannot take that from us." Lena stepped forward, her hand brushing Maya's as if to draw strength. "We will not go back. Not to be judged, not to be cast out. We have a right to be here just as much as anyone else." The villagers hesitated again, and finally, one of them lowered his head. "Perhaps we were wrong, but you must know that your actions will not be forgotten. Your families, they will hear of this." Tamaz did not flinch. "Then let them hear, but they will not harm anyone here. You must leave now." The men muttered angrily, glancing at each other, then slowly turned back toward the village. Their anger was still present, but they understood that their intimidation had failed. Maya and Lena watched them retreat, their hearts pounding but their spirits soaring. They had faced the threat of their past and survived. Once the villagers were gone, Tamaz turned to the women, his eyes filled with quiet reassurance. "You were brave," he said softly. "They came with anger and judgment, but you stood your ground. That courage will serve you well in the future." Maya and Lena felt tears prick their eyes. For so long, they had been powerless, forced to leave their village and survive alone in the harsh desert. But now, with Tamaz by their side and their own courage awakened, they realized they were capable of defending themselves. They could face threats and danger and still protect their lives and their choices. That night the women sat by the fireplace, reflecting on the day's events. "I can't believe they came here," Lena said quietly. "I thought we were safe. I thought we could finally have peace." Maya shook her head slowly. "We are safe now. They cannot take that from us. We have found a place where we are respected, where we can live without fear. That is something they will never take." Tamaz, sitting nearby, nodded. "Life will always have challenges. The world is not always fair, and there will be those who try to impose their will on you. But you have the strength, intelligence, and courage to face those challenges. And you have a place here where you are supported and valued." The women felt a sense of relief and pride. The confrontation had been frightening, but it had also shown them the power they held within themselves. They were no longer the helpless widows cast out by their village. They were capable, resilient, and deserving of safety and respect. In the days that followed, the ranch settled back into its usual rhythm. The animals grazed peacefully, the crops thrived, and the women continued to learn and grow. Yet the memory of the confrontation lingered, a reminder that the world could be harsh, and that vigilance was sometimes necessary. Maya and Lena used this experience to strengthen their confidence. They practiced asserting themselves, learning that their voices mattered and that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. They began to take on more responsibilities around the ranch, helping with repairs, organizing supplies and guiding the younger ranch hands in tasks they had mastered. Through it all, Tamaz remained a steady presence, offering guidance without control, support without intrusion. His trust in the women allowed them to grow in confidence and independence. They began to understand that true protection was not just about keeping danger away. It was about empowering others to face challenges with strength and wisdom. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of pink and purple, Maya and Lena walked to the edge of the pasture. The field stretched out before them, bathed in soft light, and the animals moved calmly through the grass. The memory of the confrontation with the villagers seemed distant now, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and peace. "We have come a long way," Maya said softly. "From the desert to this, to safety, to life that feels like it belongs to us." Lena nodded, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. "And we did it together, with courage and with help when we needed it. We are stronger than I ever imagined." Tamaz, watching them from a distance, smiled quietly. He knew that their journey was far from over. Challenges would continue to arise as they always did in life. But he also knew that Maya and Lena had learned a valuable lesson. That strength came not just from physical safety, but from the courage to stand up for oneself, to face fear, and to embrace new possibilities. As night fell and stars began to twinkle overhead, the women returned to the cabin, hearts full of gratitude and hope. They had survived the confrontation, protected themselves, and reinforced their bond with each other and with Tamaz. Their past, once filled with sorrow and exile, no longer defined them. Instead, it had shaped them into resilient, courageous women ready to embrace the future. And in the quiet of the ranch, surrounded by the sounds of animals and the whisper of the wind through the trees, Maya and Lena realized that their journey was only just beginning. They had faced danger and emerged stronger, and now they were prepared for whatever the world might bring next. The morning sun rose gently over the ranch, casting long, warm shadows across the fields. Maya and Lena were already awake, moving quietly through the small cabin where they now lived. The years of wandering and struggle seemed to belong to another life. Here, surrounded by animals, crops, and the endless sky, they felt a sense of peace that had once seemed impossible. The women had settled into a rhythm that balanced work and reflection. Each morning, they tended to the animals and the garden, making sure everything ran smoothly. By midday, they helped with cooking, cleaning, and organizing the ranch, their confidence and skills growing with every task. They no longer felt like outsiders. They were valued members of this small, thriving community. Maya paused as she brushed the coat of shadow, the horse she had grown especially close to. His dark eyes watched her calmly, and she felt a quiet bond with the animal that reminded her of her own journey. Lena approached with a basket of freshly picked vegetables, smiling as she looked at the garden, now vibrant and full. The work was hard, but it was rewarding. Every task, no matter how small, felt meaningful. Tamaz emerged from the main house, carrying a small bundle of letters and papers. He greeted the women warmly. "Good morning," he said. "I thought you might like to see these." They are letters from people in the nearby towns, neighbors and travelers who have come to know the ranch. They speak highly of your work and the care you've shown for the animals and land. Maya and Lena exchanged astonished glances. They had never expected acknowledgement, much less praise, for their efforts. Their lives had once been defined by loss, exile, and judgment, but now they were building a reputation based on their strength, dedication, and kindness. As the day went on, the ranch bustled with activity. The animals needed attention, repairs were made to the fences, and the garden demanded care. Maya and Lena worked side by side with Tamaz and the ranch hands, their confidence growing with every challenge they overcame. They had learned to rely not only on Tamaz, but also on their own abilities, discovering resilience they hadn't known existed within them. In the quiet moments, the The women reflected on how far they had come. "Do you remember the desert?" Lena asked softly as they paused to rest under a tree. "I thought we would never survive, that we were doomed to wander forever." Maya nodded, her gaze distant but thoughtful. "I remember, but we did survive. We found strength in each other, and eventually, we found Tamaz. He gave us a chance, yes, but we also had to take it. We had to choose courage." The bond between the two women had grown even stronger. They had faced loss, fear, and the threat of their past, but they had never abandoned one another. Their friendship, built on shared hardships and mutual support, was now a foundation for their new lives. As the weeks passed, Maya and Lena began to take on more responsibilities. They supervised the younger ranch hands, teaching them what they had learned. They experimented with planting new crops in the garden and found joy in seeing the results of their labor. The ranch, once a place of mere survival, had become a place of creativity, growth, and possibility. Tamaz observed their progress with quiet satisfaction. He had offered them safety and guidance, but it was their courage, determination, and hard work that had truly transformed their lives. He often spoke to them about independence and resilience, reminding them that the world was full of challenges, but also of opportunities for those willing to embrace them. One afternoon, a visitor arrived at the ranch, a young woman who had heard of the widow's courage and resilience. She had traveled from a nearby village, seeking advice and guidance on caring for her own small herd of animals. Maya and Lena welcomed her warmly, sharing their knowledge and experiences. In helping her, they realized how far they had come. They were no longer the vulnerable women cast out of a village. They were teachers, mentors, and role models. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned shades of pink and orange, the women sat on the porch, watching the animals move peacefully across the fields. "It feels perfect," Lena said quietly. "I never imagined life could be like this after all we've been through." Maya smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "It is perfect, not because it is easy, but because we worked for it. Every struggle, every challenge, it led us here, and we did it together." Tamaz joined them, a soft smile on his face. "You've grown so much," he said gently. "You've turned hardship into strength, fear into courage. You've built a life that is honest, meaningful, and full of hope, and that is something to be proud of." The women felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had survived exile, learned to trust again, and found purpose in work and community. The ranch was no longer just a place of refuge. It had become a home, a place where they could thrive and look toward the future with hope. In the following months, Maya and Lena continued to grow in their roles. They organized small community events, inviting neighbors and travelers to the ranch. They shared their knowledge, helped those in need, and contributed to a culture of cooperation and respect. Their confidence and joy were contagious, and the ranch flourished under their care. Despite their busy days, they also took time for quiet reflection. They would walk together along the hills, watching the sunset and sharing stories of their past lives, acknowledging the pain but also celebrating their resilience. They learned that healing was not just about physical safety. It was about reclaiming joy, building connections, and embracing the future with courage. One day, as they worked in the garden, Lena paused and looked at Maya with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think we could ever go back to the village?" she asked. Maya shook her head gently. "No, that chapter is closed. We survived it and it taught us valuable lessons. But our future, it is here in this place where we are respected and safe. We don't need their approval anymore." Tamaz, overhearing their conversation, nodded. "Exactly. Your lives belong to you now. You decide your path, your purpose, and your happiness. And you've already shown that you are capable of creating something beautiful from hardship." The women smiled, feeling a sense of liberation. They had been exiled, judged, and forced to survive alone, yet they had found a life filled with purpose, respect, and hope. The ranch had given them more than safety. It had given them a second chance, an opportunity to rebuild, and the freedom to define their own lives. As the seasons changed, Maya and Lena's skills continued to grow. They learned to mend fences, manage livestock, and coordinate harvests. They experimented with new planting techniques, expanding the garden and increasing the yield. Their contributions were valued by everyone on the ranch, and their confidence soared with each success. Evenings became a time for reflection and gratitude. They would sit by the fire, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments of peace. They spoke of dreams for the future, of helping others who had faced hardship, and of the joy that came from building a life with intention and care. Maya often thought back to the desert, to the day they were forced out of the village. The memory still carried a sting, but it was softened by the knowledge that their struggles had led them here. They had learned resilience, courage, and the power of friendship. They had discovered that even in the darkest moments, hope could be found and nurtured if one was willing to seek it. Lena felt a similar sense of fulfillment. The fear and loneliness she had experienced in the desert now seemed like a distant memory. She had faced danger, survived uncertainty, and learned to trust again. More than that, she had discovered her own strength and the satisfaction of contributing to something meaningful. Life at the ranch was not just survival, it was growth, empowerment, and joy. One evening, as the sky turned deep shades of purple and the first stars appeared, the women stood together on a hill overlooking the ranch. The fields stretched before them, the animals moved peacefully, and the house stood solid and welcoming. The wind carried the scent of earth, grass, and the promise of tomorrow. "We've come a long way," Maya said softly, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Yes," Lena replied. "From the desert to this to life we never imagined we could have. I am grateful for every moment." Tamaz joined them, standing quietly beside the women. "You've earned this life," he said gently. "You've faced challenges, embraced opportunity, and created something wonderful. And the future, it is yours to shape." The women felt a sense of peace and fulfillment unlike anything they had known. They had survived hardship, found strength in each other, and built a life filled with purpose and hope. The ranch was no longer just a refuge, it was a home, a place of empowerment, growth, and community. As night fell, they returned to the cabin, hearts full of gratitude and anticipation for the days ahead. They knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but they were prepared to face them together. They had learned courage, resilience, and the power of friendship. And above all, they had discovered that even after loss and exile, life could be filled with hope, safety, and joy. Maya and Lena lay down that night, the sounds of the ranch, the soft breathing of animals, the rustle of leaves, and the distant call of an owl, lulling them to sleep. They were no longer victims of circumstance. They were survivors, creators, and empowered women ready to embrace all that life had to offer. And in the quiet of the night, under a sky filled with stars, they knew that their journey had only just begun. They had faced the harshest trials, discovered their own strength, and now they were free to build a future filled with courage, love, and endless possibilities.